Hello, I'm Naveen Darshan, a global MBA student at Myra School of Business, and this is Julian, visiting scholar at Myra from the Julius Maximilian University of Germany. And with us today is Professor Raghavendra Rau, visiting faculty at Myra School of Business, who teaches us a course on corporate governance and ethics. Professor Raghavendra Rau is the Sir Evelyn de Rothschild Professor of Finance at Cambridge University's Judge Business School. Before a long and illustrious career in academia and industry, he had done a PGDM from IIM Bangalore and a Ph.D. in finance from INSEAD, France. His research areas include corporate finance, behavioral finance, asset pricing, company valuation, among others. He's also been a recipient of the Ig Nobel Prize, which is a unique prize awarded for research in questions that initially make people laugh but then get people to think about those issues. Professor Rau, on behalf of Myra, I have a few questions for you. So first of all, welcome back to Myra, sir. How does it feel to be back at Myra, and tell us about your experience this time around?
Okay, well, I enjoy being back in Myra every year. You know, the weather is so much nicer than England at this time of the year, and you don't get much South Indian food over in Cambridge, so it's very nice to spend winters here. And over the last few years, I've watched Myra develop, and it's become much more streamlined than it has been in the past. So that's another thing which is nice to see. There's an organization which is growing from initial stages and is now reasonably much more polished than it was even 5 years ago.
Could you tell us briefly about the corporate governance and ethics course that you've taught us over the last couple of weeks, and its relevance and importance from a managerial perspective?
Okay, at the end of the day, the question which we have to ask ourselves is, you know, why would you want to commit money, want to give money to somebody whom you don't know? So it's basically you're giving money to a manager, you're giving money to a firm. The major problem is, are you sure you're going to get your money back, right? So essentially, the main point of this course is to try to find out is what kind of incentives, what kind of mechanisms do managers put on themselves, what kind of constraints should they put on themselves to show shareholders that they have no ability to steal their money. So these are voluntary mechanisms. They can be regulated, but if every company has a regulated mechanism, it's not much of a signal. So we talk about this from an economic point of view, signaling theory, swing theory, and trying to figure out, are there efficient mechanisms which can increase the ability of good firms to distinguish themselves from bad firms. At the end of the day, that's what the investor cares about, a good firm who is not going to be out there trying to steal his money.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about what's going on in Europe at the moment, especially what's going on in the UK. So how do you think the Brexit will change the financial markets and the financial structure in Europe and especially in the UK?
Well, that's a good question. First of all, we don't even know if Brexit's going to happen or not.
Yes.
Right? So the UK government is in complete shambles, so we have literally no idea what's going to happen in March when the 2-year period is supposed to come to an end. But if it goes ahead, then I think this is a terrible issue for Europe a little bit, but much more so from the UK, because you're ending up in a situation of a small country with absolutely no bargaining power against all its other peers. So in the worst case scenario, you would imagine that all the financial services industry, which is a huge part of the UK economy, finds it unable to deal with Europe sitting in London outside the European Union, and so a lot of companies will move to Frankfurt or Paris or places like that, and that's going to be an issue in terms of house prices and inflation and all these other issues in the UK. But as I said, we have no idea. We see in the last 1 month alone, the price of the pound started out at 1.3 per dollar a month ago, now it's 1.25. So we have, who knows what's going to happen in the next month or so.
And what do you think are the main differences in the financial market in emerging countries like India and some industry nation financial markets?
Well, the most liquid financial markets today are usually the American market, possibly somewhat the British market. But these markets are basically characterized by a huge proportion of equity investors, very few, and the size of the equity market is very large compared to the size of the debt market. If you look at other countries, if you look at countries like in Europe, for example, that's not really true. The equity market is much smaller relative to the debt market. And in other developing economies, there's still a question of what is the level of domestic savings. So if you look at the US and the UK, they have very deep and liquid equity markets, and very large relative to the volume of debt.
As you told us 10 minutes ago, yes.
Exactly. So in contrast, in Europe, you have the other way around, and in developing markets, there's a problem with the depth of either the debt equity in the debt market. So different mechanisms come into play when trying to figure out how best to protect the rights of the investors and the stakeholders in the firm. So in the US, as we'll see in a few minutes, it'll turn out that a lot of it is done by legal regulations on the board. But the board doesn't play much of a role if you're looking at Germany, if you're looking at countries in Africa. There you'll find family ownership, you'll find a lot of other different mechanisms, activist shareholders, concentration of creditors, those which you do not find in the US. So these things play out differently in different types of the world depending on who are the people with the most amount of bargaining power and who are the people with the least amount of bargaining power. So in different markets you will see different solutions for these questions.
Okay.
I have a question about blockchain, sir. Mm-hmm. So although it's already in wide use, blockchain is often touted as a technology that's going to bring about sea change in the way businesses function. So apart from the most familiar aspect of blockchain, which is cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin or Ether, what does blockchain entail for finance and businesses in general?
Well, essentially, blockchain is really nothing, technology isn't new. The idea is actually very straightforward. If you have a traditional double-entry bookkeeping ledger, the key problem is, do you trust the person who's actually holding the ledger, right? So if I and you are both dealing in something and you record the notes, the worry I have is that you alter the notes when I'm not looking. Or if I'm holding the ledger, I alter the notes when you're not looking. So the terms of trade are different from what we agreed on. The idea with the blockchain is the ability to construct a ledger which is indelible. In other words, you and I don't know each other, we don't trust each other, but still we can construct a transaction which cannot be altered by either party. So it allows people to have a lot deeper interest, a deeper trust in a way in businesses. So in other words, it will work in an issue where I have no idea even whether you're a human being or an artificial intelligence system, I would still be able to trust the blockchain.
Sure. And finally, any advice in general you have for us students in Myra?
Well, I'll probably say this thing is very exciting times to live in because there's so many new developments in finance happening around the world. So I'd probably advise you to stay abreast with all these issues. And traditional corporate finance, traditional corporate governance mechanisms are interesting, but they haven't changed much for the last 20 years. So the stuff which is happening now, especially in the last 5 years, there's a huge number of new areas which have opened up and probably well worth studying.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time, Professor Rao.
Thank you very much.
And we look forward to having you back, Myra, next year as well.
I look forward to that.
Thank you.